Welcome to the RNLI's COBT Module 15.1 Media Awareness. My name's Richard Smith. I'm a media trainer with the RNLI and my background's in journalism. I was a journalist for 26 years in various regional newspapers in England, and my speciality was dealing in what's called hard news, and hard news translates into what has just happened. And the journalists out there today, they like the RNLI and they like us because we deal in hard news, in that our hard news is: why did the pager go off? Why did the lifeboat launch? What did it do? And journalists from all types of media platforms will follow us because we've got a story to tell. What I'm going to do today is go through a few key points for you, looking at our positive and negative stories, looking at how the RNLI interacts with the media, thinking about what are the risks to our reputation, and talking about video footage, the importance of recording videos. We'll also be thinking about how do we use social media, and what are the charity's key messages? What is it the charity stands for? When we turn to positive stories, we're thinking about a rescue. A rescue, that is the hard news, what has just happened, and that's where we want to get publicity as quickly as possible. And if somebody's life has been saved, that is also a notable positive story. And we would want to get that message out, and hopefully that the person whose life has been saved may also want to talk to a journalist and tell their story. We also get a lot of positive stories from the Respect the Water campaign. This is the RNLI's campaign to reduce the number of accidental coastline drownings. We also talk about major fundraising achievements and also landmark anniversaries. A notable one coming up in several years, for example, is the fact that the RNLI will celebrate its 200th birthday in 2024, and we'll be looking to get lots of positive reaction from the public about that. We also get a lot of positivity from celebrities backing the RNLI. Those are people who are well known, they are our ambassadors, and you too are also our ambassadors, because you can talk about what it is that the RNLI does and what you've been doing on a shout. I've got a series of examples in this module, and the first example we're going to look at today is a positive story, and it is a story that was embellished by the use of RNLI video footage. And quite basically, if the RNLI lifeboat crew had not turned on their video camera, not taken the footage or edited it, then this item would probably have never got onto national television. It's a story, a heartwarming story, all about a dog. The dog is called Poppy. Poppy falls quite a long way down a cliff. The RNLI rescues the dog, and the dog is reunited with its grateful family. And this earns us a lot of positivity, and also we then invite the family back to the lifeboat station. They thank the crew, and we have an opportunity at that stage to talk about key messaging on why it is that we go out and save lives of animals, so that the owners do not put themselves into serious risk by trying to carry out the rescue themselves.
And finally, a dog that chased a seagull over the edge of a cliff went flying herself. Poppy, the Springer Spaniel, plunged 300 feet, landed in the water and somehow managed to survive. She swam to the shore, where help was soon on its way, as Sally Biddulph explains.
Cold, wet and in shock, Poppy, the Springer Spaniel, shivers at the bottom of a huge cliff.
Hello? It's okay. It's okay.
She's rescued by the New Haven lifeboat after falling 300 foot from the top. She saw a seagull, chased it and ended up in the sea. And she's one lucky pup. She landed where there was just enough water to break her fall and just enough beach to stop her from drowning. Remarkably, Poppy was pretty much unharmed by the fall. She had a partially collapsed lung which has now healed, and she's back home with her very grateful owners.
I can't even put it into words. We are still totally overwhelmed at what happened, and you know, we always knew she was a dog in a million. Now she really is.
Well, I thought she was a goner, to be honest, but I couldn't see how she could survive something like that. But we just thank the lifeboats and the Coast Guard for acting so promptly, and it's a lesson to other dog walkers, really.
With cliffs as beautiful as these, it's still going to be a favourite walk for Poppy. But her seagull chasing days are over. She's not being let off her lead. This is one shaggy dog story with a very happy ending.
The RNLI carries out well over 8,000, sometimes over 8,500 rescues amongst lifeboats a year. And there's always the potential after a rescue for a positive story to get out into the media. And in this example, we're going to have a look at another television item. This comes from Scotland, and it's to do with the rescue of a man, an elderly man who was on his boat on his own when he got into trouble, and the RNLI crew went out and did the rescue, brought him back. They recorded the shout, and the video footage is then used by STV, which is the National Independent Company in Scotland. The coxswain is interviewed and the gentleman is interviewed as well.
Finally tonight, a pensioner has been speaking of his lucky escape after a freak wave knocked him out of his small yacht in the Atlantic. 71-year-old Jerry Beard was washed overboard near the Butt of Lewis, but was somehow catapulted back into his boat thanks to another giant wave. Fiona McElwraith has the story.
Stornoway lifeboat throw a lifeline to 71-year-old Jerry Beard in the raging gale that nearly cost him his life. Earlier, Jerry from Torridon had been washed off his yacht by a freak 30-foot wave into the Atlantic. The petrified sailor clung desperately to a piece of rigging until the next wave, amazingly, pushed the boat underneath him and he collapsed into the cockpit. Back on dry land in Stornoway today, he says he's lucky to be alive.
The thing that's struck me afterwards, that because I'm always fastened on, I don't wear a life jacket, I wear a harness. So if it had gone over the side, I wouldn't have even had a life jacket on. I'd have just had my harness. I'm alive and well, and, you know, main thing.
After landing back in his yacht, Jerry managed to activate his personal locator beacon, which scrambled the Stornoway Coast Guard helicopter and lifeboat to the scene 50 miles north of the Butt of Lewis.
The wind speed was 40 knots, 30-foot seas, and the position Jerry had given was on a shallow bank, which makes things a wee bit more tricky. And the crew did very well, passing the tow first time, and everything went as expected.
Mr. Beard had been sailing solo from Reykjavik in Iceland to his home in Westeros for 11 days in treacherous conditions. After winds started battering his 35-foot yacht, things started to go wrong. And now he has nothing but praise for the people who rescued him.
They give you so much confidence. You know, I mean, it's all so routine. They've rehearsed it so many times. The only question that I was asked by the coxswain was, do you normally sail alone? And I said yes. So they then took it for granted that I'd know what to do.
Despite Jerry's terrifying ordeal, he has no plans to give up the sea just yet. Fiona McElwraith, STV News.
But he's glad to be back on dry land.
When we think about celebrities who back the RNLI, celebrities are household names. They are famous people. They are out there supporting us. They don't have a great deal of time, so they normally use the Twitter social media feed to talk about their involvement with our charity. And we get a lot of support from them, and some of them have a fair few followers. Richard Branson, who I'm sure you know the name well, he has a cool 12.4 million Twitter followers. Bear Grylls, Adventure and Explorer, doesn't have quite so many, but still 1.3 million. David Morrissey, an actor, 365,000 followers on Twitter. And they, for example, have been supporting us during the Saving Lives at Sea television campaign, talking about the charity and our campaigns and our safety messages and getting out the word. But of course, the flip side of a positive story is the fact that, yeah, there are negative stories out there. The RNLI is a huge organisation, and it counts many, many thousands of volunteers, not just on crew, but also fundraising and other vital opportunities around the coastline. And things will go wrong, and they do have the potential to be negative stories for us that get played out in the media. And examples of negative stories are, for example, a rescue goes wrong, equipment fails, or the lifeboat crew criticise a rescuee for getting into difficulty. And we like to remind our crews that you go out, you carry out the rescue, but we don't want to judge or speculate on the rescuee. And we also have to be mindful of the fact that we are an organisation that prides itself on being very professional in everything that we do. And we have to be careful that it doesn't matter whether we're a volunteer or a full-time member of staff, that we conduct ourselves with a professional attitude at all times. And for you, that's whether you're on or off the lifeboat, because we just need to be careful that there are some people out there who might take a dislike to sometimes what goes on and want to try and create bad press. I think what you as crew need to remember is that if you're ever approached by a journalist, and they should identify themselves as a journalist and tell you which company they work for, but if you are ever approached by one, you need to refer them to your lifeboat press officer, that's the LPO. We have nearly 300 volunteer lifeboat press officers around the coast doing a great job for the media team on the ground. And if the LPO is not available, refer to the media to your lifeboat operations manager. And we also have 24/7, 365 days a year, a press officer on duty who can deal with any request from the media. So the thing to take away from there is if a journalist approaches you, please refer them to somebody else, and it might be that then you're given permission to actually do an interview with that journalist, but anything you say to the journalist will be used, and you need to be careful about your interaction with them. The RNLI interacts with journalists alongside traditional media platforms such as radio, newspapers and television. But newspapers, of course, are not just printed now, they're also online. And we also work with glossy magazines where we have the potential to get features in, which is a spread, as it's called, with several photographs and text. And of course, we work on new platforms, new media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And the reason why we work on all media platforms is that we need to get our word out to all the different types of people, the different age groups that use the different media platforms. So we do have risks to our reputation, and the risks are largely from operational things going wrong or non-operational things going wrong. And the reason why we are so proud of our reputation and so careful to manage it is that if our reputation gets knocked, then this can affect the public's perception of the charity, and they might decide not to give us so much money. Ultimately, we rely on money to keep us going, and we have to be careful that our reputation is squeaky clean. Now, if we look at operational things that are a risk to our reputation, they can deal with something like a crew member getting injured on a shout, a crew member going missing on a shout. And think about a lifeboat. It's a mechanical piece of art, and it can go wrong, it can break down, it can get damaged, or a D-class can capsize. And a rescue can go wrong, As I said earlier, we have thousands of rescues a year. So potentially there is a possibility a rescue may go wrong, and the public and the media always like to point a finger and say who was to blame. And also people can get injured when they come to a lifeboat station. They might be attending an open day, they might be down at the promenade or on the pier or on the harbour. The weather may turn bad, the surface may be slippery, somebody may slip over and damage themselves. And again, the media, the public say, who is to blame? And that would be a risk to our reputation. Non-operationally, we have thousands and thousands of volunteers, and rarely somebody might do something wrong, then they might get accused of criminal activity, financial impropriety, and of course we might have a personnel dispute amongst crew members dotted around the coastline. And we also have that possibility that inappropriate content would be posted to social media. The world has moved on so quickly, and when I was a journalist, I used to spend a lot of time in the pub. That was where I got the gossip, that was where I met my contacts, that was where I got the chit-chat, and that was where I got the stories. Today, what has happened, all that chit-chat, it doesn't really happen in the pub so much now. It all happens on social media, and it happens very, very quickly. As you know, you can post something, it's live within a second, and it can be seen by a few people, and it grows and it's shared and it grows and it shares, and ultimately it's seen by thousands of people. And then the RNLI's media team has to work out, well, what do we say when inappropriate content has been posted on social media? I'm going to show you an example now. It's an example of a newspaper cutting taken from that well-known, cheap and cheerful Sun newspaper. The article takes up a whole page, and because it's the Sun, they like a little bit of bare flesh as well. And there's also a picture of a lifeboat and some crew members as well. This is a case where something went wrong at a lifeboat station on an evening inside the station, and at some point details were leaked to the press. The press love a leak because it also smacks of something going wrong, and media like to publicise that. And this is something that it's an unsavoury headline, an unsavoury episode. It is a risk to our reputation, and then we have to manage it. And when we manage risks to our reputation, we often call in our legal team, our human resources team, our social media team, and our media team. So a lot of people working behind the scenes of the RNLI, putting together a briefing and then working out what statement can we put out in public to a journalist. And in this example here, we see a lifeboat. It's centre stage on the front page of a newspaper, and the lifeboat cost a couple of million. This was a few years ago, it costs more now. It's on the rocks, literally, high and dry after something went wrong, and the story gets played out in the media. And here, what the media love about this story is that the lifeboat was on the rocks for many days. And for the media, this is called a running story, because every day they could go down, look at the lifeboat, take pictures, talk to people, get different angles day by day, have a running story, and ultimately it kept the RNLI in the public eye, but it was perhaps headlines we didn't really want to see. When we think of the likes of items on television with RNLI video footage, when we think of Saving Lives at Sea, that powerful drama on the BBC that's had 3 series, what we're actually thinking about is the videos that have been taken by RNLI crew on kit that has been funded by the public. And there are many charities that would be really, really envious of what we have achieved, because we have been showing through Saving Lives at Sea the work of the RNLI. It has been seen by millions of viewers, and it's been seen on television and we've done a lot of backup work on social media. And for example, after a television episode, we have then gone to a lifeboat station and done a live social media feed on Facebook with some of the crew that have just been featured in an episode. And that is a good example of the synergy working there, television and social media. And this is through the video camera project. And the aim is that crews have video cameras. We've been bringing in GoPro cameras to try and make it easier, and they take footage of what has happened at sea, and then it's edited, and then it has to go through the internal video library. It has to be moderated. That's basically checked and approved by people in HQ, and then it goes live. And when it goes live, we want it to show a portrait of the RNLI as a good charity, a charity that carries out rescues to high standards. And every piece of footage taken through a video camera or a mobile phone on a shout has to go through the internal video library. This is to make sure that we know what's going out there, and it protects us as well. Now with the videos, they have been used on thousands and thousands of shouts now, and we have to be very careful when we do the edit. We have to make sure that we don't intrude into somebody's grief, that we don't show them in a shocked state or suffering from hypothermia. We don't show them in a light that they would be embarrassed by. So we have to just be careful when we do our edit. We also have to take into account, do we have their permission? And if we don't have permission, we can still use a video. What we have to do though, is we have to do what's called edit round, so that nobody can identify them. And that means that we don't show their face, and therefore nobody identifies them. And we don't show the name of the boat either. But the message is, we want to take videos, we want to take them as much as possible. We edit them. If we've got permission from the casualty to use them, that makes an even more powerful video, because they can perhaps tell their story to camera. If we don't have permission, we will edit round, and we'll still be able to show some sort of short video clip of what has taken place. If we turn now to social media, which has already been mentioned several times during this module. Social media, the benefits you will know. It's free, it's simple to use, and it's widespread. What you post can be seen by millions of people. It can go viral, basically meaning it can be seen worldwide and get a huge following. It raises our profile, which ultimately is what we need to do. We always need to look at ways of raising our profile, because there are many, many other charities out there. They all want publicity and they all want people's money. So we have to keep reminding everyone that we are the charity that saves lives at sea. It's also a direct channel of communication. You can ask a question on social media and you want an answer, and you want it pretty quick. It's a world that is constantly evolving. It is difficult sometimes to keep up with social media, and it's a far, far cry from the days when I used to write my stories on a typewriter. And now I can see people just posting pictures of something they've seen in the street onto social media instantly. So those are a few advantages of the benefits of social media. And I'm going to show you an example now of a RNLI official Facebook page posting. And there's a few words of text and there's a link to a video, and it's very, very powerful. This was taken from Saving Lives at Sea, the third series. Talks about the 13-year-old boy who saved his dad. It's out there on social media. We've got the video embedded, and it's seen by millions of people. And we can also use social media a bit more light-hearted. You know, we can post things, put videos up, pictures of things going on, a little bit lower key, not so much hard news. And I'm going to show you an example of a RNLI Facebook page posting. I have a feeling most of you will have seen it before in some guise or another on social media, but it basically says this is the festive season, these are the days of the festive season, and the RNLI is on call 24 hours a day. It's a great piece of publicity. It gets shared all over the world, and it just reminds everybody that we are the charity that is on call 24/7, 365 days a year. If we think about positive stories, negative stories, if you think about the benefits of social media, there are pitfalls of social media. And again, the direct channel of communication, which is a positive point, can also be negative. That's when somebody asks really awkward questions of us and we have to think, well, what are we going to say in public? It's when people criticise us. And yeah, we have to take criticism on board, but sometimes we don't really want to be playing that out in social media. We would prefer perhaps the old-fashioned way of writing somebody a letter in the post, but the world has moved on and we have to be upfront and we have to be robust and say things on social media. And social media can also be detrimental when inappropriate content is posted. And I'm thinking there about content that might be slightly cheeky, slightly risque, have black humour, bit of banter, and things that, yeah, people might talk about in the lifeboat crew room when they're unwinding after a shout, or perhaps they're enjoying themselves at Christmas, but perhaps not the things that we want to see out there. And this example coming up now, this is an example of a picture, and the caption talks about taking out hot chicks. Not quite the professional attitude we're really wanting to portray in our charity. And the next example, well-intentioned, it looks at training, it looks at different types of training in the RNLI, and looks at casualty care, which of course is fundamental to what we do. However, when you look at the example, perhaps just a little bit too much blood there. We don't really want that out on social media. And one of the hashtags says Halloween comes early, and okay, understand where they're coming from, but perhaps just a little bit too cheeky for social media. And if you think about WhatsApp, I'm sure that most of you will use WhatsApp, whether it's in your personal life, in your social life, in your jobs, and in crew. And you will be there in a group WhatsApp, and you might be thinking, oh, I can say what I like, it's all private, nobody else is going to see it, it's just the 10 of us in the WhatsApp group. What you just need to remember is that if somebody in your group becomes a little bit disenchanted with what's been said, they might decide to come off the group, and they might decide to share some of the content and share it on their own social media channels. And other people might find it offensive. They might find it racist or sexist. They might not see the humour in it. And the next example comes up is a few lines, a few words about an item in which University of Exeter students were in a WhatsApp group, got a little bit out of hand. Somebody then spilled the beans. It had dire repercussions. One guy who was aiming to be a lawyer was then threatened with losing his potential job. Now, the RNLI has a variety of key messages. Key messages are basically our soundbite. They are, what do we stand for? And the first one is really as powerful as you can get, and it is, we are the charity that saves lives at sea. I mean, that is just so convincing to anybody out there that you, the crew, will go off in a lifeboat all hours, a day or night, whatever the weather throws. You'll go out there, you'll do a job, you'll come back, and then you'll go off to work, or you'll get off to your families and have to carry on with life as normal. We're also a charity that's independent of the government. Basically, that means, yeah, we're not part of the government. The Coast Guard are part of the government, but we're not. We're independent. 95% of the charity are volunteers. We operate 24/7, 365 days a year. Yeah, that means always on call. Volunteer crew carrying a pager. And we're financed by public donations. And we need to remember that the people out there, they fundraise for us, and they do it too in all weathers as well, and we publicise what they do. Those are all key messages, and let's just look at a few other key messages that are also vital to our cause. We are the life-saving organisation that has lifeboats, lifeguards, safety advice, inland flood rescue, and thinking back again to we are the charity that saves lives at sea, since 1824, when we were formed, we have saved more than 140,000 lives, a phenomenal number. More than 90% of our income comes from donations. We have the Respect the Water campaign. This is the campaign that wants to reduce the number of accidental drownings. We do a lot of publicity on it, and we do talks and education on it, and we have merchandise, beer mats, plastic glasses with the slogans on them about respect the water, and we have the float video and other things to raise awareness. Finally, I would just like to thank you for listening and watching the 15.1 media awareness module. I just want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. I've already mentioned them. Social media is the first one, and that is that nothing is private on social media. I think that's just a good one to carry away with you. And also, just remember the journalists, they like us because we deal in hard news. We've got a story to tell. And that means journalists are favourable to the RNLI. But just remember, nothing is ever off the record. They will always use whatever you've said and use it in their publication. Thank you.